What happens when a man who can buy anything he wants meets a woman who sees everything he isn't? In the heart of downtown Chicago, inside a cozy old-world Italian restaurant, a quiet waitress serves the city's most ruthless real estate tycoon. He sees a nobody, a ghost in an apron, someone to be dismissed and belittled. But he doesn't know who she really is. He doesn't know the secret she's hiding behind her tired eyes and polite smile. And he has no idea that by the time he finishes his overpriced steak, his world is about to be bought right out from under him. The scent of garlic simmering tomato sauce and old wood was Maya Reed's sanctuary. For 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, she wasn't the architect of Project Chimera, a revolutionary AI logistics algorithm currently in the final agonizing stages of a 9-figure acquisition by Microsoft. She wasn't the girl who had spent the last 6 years coding in a cramped Palo Alto apartment, fueled by instant noodles and a terrifyingly potent blend of ambition and desperation. Here at La Stella, she was just Maya, waitress, number 27 on the payroll. La Stella was an anachronism, a beautiful relic nestled defiantly between a sleek glass and steel bank tower and a minimalist, painfully hip art gallery on a prime piece of Chicago real estate. Its owner, Giovanni Rossi, a man whose face was a road map of 70 years of laughter and worry, had inherited it from his father. The red leather booths were cracked and softened with age, the checkered tablecloths were faded, and the black and white photos on the wall told the story of a family and a city that had long since changed. For Maya, it was perfect. The NDA she'd signed for the Microsoft deal was a lead blanket, suffocating her with confidentiality clauses and the sheer terrifying weight of the money involved. Her lawyer, Marcus Thorne, called her daily with updates that made her stomach clench. The final due diligence was a microscopic examination of her life's work. Any day now, the wire transfer would hit and her life would detonate. Until then, she needed to be invisible. She needed to feel the satisfying ache in her feet after a long shift, the simple, tangible reality of clearing a plate, of refilling a water glass. Her own parents had run a small diner in Ohio, and the familiar clatter and rhythm of a restaurant was the only lullaby that could quiet the screaming anxiety in her head. Her colleagues were a collection of city lifers. There was Brenda, a waitress in her late 50s, with a cigarette-cured rasp and an encyclopedic knowledge of every regular's love life. There was Carlos, a college kid working as a busboy, perpetually in motion, with dreams of being a graphic designer. And there was Mr. Rossi, who still came in every day tasting the sauce and personally greeting guests his presence, a warm, comforting hearth at the center of the restaurant. They knew her as Maya, the quiet girl who'd shown up looking for a job 6 months ago. She was reliable, efficient, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. She observed. She saw Brenda discreetly slipping a bread roll into her apron for the homeless man who slept near the alley. She saw Carlos meticulously arranging silverware, his brow furrowed in concentration, as if he were designing a masterpiece. She saw the quiet dignity with which Mr. Rossi treated every person who walked through his door, regardless of whether they ordered the $90 lobster special or just a $10 bowl of minestrone. She also saw the vultures circling. She'd overheard hushed conversations about rising property taxes, about letters from a development corporation, Sterling Properties. The name was whispered with a mixture of fear and resentment. They were notorious for buying up historic blocks, tearing them down, and erecting soulless luxury high-rises that cast long shadows over the city. Mr. Rossi always waved off the concerns with a sad smile. "This place is my heart," he'd say. "It is not for sale." But Maya, a creature of data and patterns, could see the strain in his eyes. She saw the way his shoulders slumped after a phone call, the way he'd stare at the portrait of his late wife Stella, for whom the restaurant was named, his expression a cocktail of grief and exhaustion. He was fighting a losing battle, and she knew it. The world she came from, the world of relentless, predatory growth, was coming for this small, beautiful piece of the past. She just didn't know it was about to walk right through the front door and sit at table 7. Tuesday nights were usually steady but manageable, a mix of theatre-goers and business travellers. At 7:15 p.m., the bell above the door chimed, admitting a blast of chilly lake air and 2 men. One was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire student loan debt. The other man was shorter, carrying a briefcase, with the anxious, deferential air of an assistant. The tall one was Damien Sterling. Maya didn't know his name yet, but she recognized the type instantly. He didn't wait to be seated. He strode into the dining room as if he were inspecting a property he already owned, his sharp grey eyes sweeping across the room with a look of undisguised contempt. He pointed at table 7, a 4-top booth in the quietest corner. "We'll sit there," he commanded, not looking at the hostess. Brenda, ever the professional, intercepted him with menus. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to La Stella. Right this way." Sterling waved a dismissive hand, already sliding into the booth. "Just water. Still. No ice. And make it quick." Brenda's smile tightened, but she nodded and retreated. The table was in Maya's section. She took a deep breath, grabbing a notepad and 2 glasses. This was the part of the job she disliked, the part that reminded her of the venture capitalists who had looked her up and down, sizing her up before even listening to her pitch. "Good evening," she said, her voice soft, and even as she placed the water on the table. "My name is Maya. Can I get you started with something from the bar?" Sterling didn't look at her. He was scrolling through his phone, his thumb moving with aggressive speed. "I already said what I want. Are you deaf, Stillwater? No ice. This has ice." He flicked a finger at the single pristine cube floating in his glass. It was Mr. Rossi's rule, 1 cube always, unless specified. A touch of class, he called it. "My apologies, sir. I'll bring you another one right away." Maya said, her voice betraying no emotion. She retrieved the glass, her movements economical and calm. His companion, whose name she later learned was Arthur, shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Sterling, the appetizers here are supposed to be fantastic. The calamari. Arthur, are we here to eat, or are we here to work?" Sterling snapped, finally looking up from his phone, not at Arthur, but around the room. "Look at this place. It's a relic. God knows what's living in the walls. I can't believe Rossi is still holding out." Maya's blood went cold. Rossi. So this was him. The Sterling from Sterling Properties. She placed the new glass of water on the table, her hand perfectly steady. "Are you ready to order, or do you need a few more minutes?" she asked. Sterling sighed, a sound of profound, theatrical suffering. "Fine. Give me the New York strip, medium rare, if your chef knows what that is. And I want it charred on the outside, but red, not pink, on the inside. If it comes out pink, I'm sending it back. If it's overcooked, I'm sending it back. If it's even slightly tough, I'm sending it back. And a side of asparagus, steamed. No butter, no salt, just the vegetables. Do you think you can manage that?" Each word was a small, condescending dart. He was speaking to her as if she were a faulty piece of software, an idiot child. She met his gaze for a fraction of a second. His eyes were like polished stones, devoid of warmth or empathy. He wasn't seeing a person. He was seeing a function, an obstacle to his meal. A New York strip medium rare char outside Red Center. Steamed asparagus, no butter, no salt. "I understand," she recited calmly. She turned to Arthur. "And for you, Sir Arthur, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I'll have the same. Please. Maya nodded and walked away, her back straight. She could feel Sterling's eyes on her, a dismissive glance, before he returned to the glowing screen of his phone. She entered the order into the terminal, adding a specific note for the chef, an old pro named Miguel, who had been with Rossi for 20 years. Table 7. Very particular. Please watch the temp. Over the next hour, Maya observed the man at table 7. He was a black hole of courtesy, sucking all the warmth and grace out of his vicinity. He sent the bread basket back because the crust wasn't audibly crisp. He complained that the ambient music, a soft collection of Italian folk songs, was distracting. He spoke to Arthur in a tone dripping with derision, publicly berating him for a mistake in a document they were reviewing. The steaks arrived. Maya watched as Sterling cut into his. He chewed one piece slowly, his expression one of intense scrutiny, as if judging a Nobel Prize entry. He swallowed. It's adequate, he pronounced, the highest form of praise he seemed capable of. For a moment, Maya felt a sliver of relief. But the reprieve was short-lived. The catalyst was not the food, but the wine. Or rather, the lack of it being immediately available. After finishing his meal, Sterling decided he wanted a drink. He didn't try to catch Maya's eye or raise a polite hand. He snapped his fingers. The sound cut through the low hum of the dining room. It was sharp, ugly, and imperious. Every head in the immediate vicinity turned. Brenda, who was at the next table, flinched. Maya, who was delivering a dessert, stopped in her tracks. She calmly placed the tiramisu on its table and walked over to Sterling. "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" "A glass of the Sassicaia." 2015, he said, not looking at her. He was staring at Mr. Rossi, who was now standing near the kitchen entrance, his expression troubled. "Of course, sir. I'll check if we have that vintage," Maya said. L'Estella's wine list was good, but not exhaustive. A 2015 Sassicaia was a specific high-end request. She went to the bar. As she suspected, they didn't have the 2015. They had the 2016, a respectable vintage in its own right. She returned to the table. "Sir, I apologize, but we don't have the 2015. We do have the 2016 vintage, which is also an excellent year for—" Sterling cut her off, his voice rising in volume. "Is this a joke? Do you know what a wine cellar is? Or do you just keep a few dusty bottles of cheap Chianti in the back? Don't offer me the 16. If I wanted the 16, I would have asked for it." The public nature of his outburst was designed to humiliate. Maya felt a flush of heat creep up her neck, but her expression remained a mask of professional calm. "I'm very sorry we couldn't accommodate your request, sir. Is there anything else I can get for you?" "No. There is nothing else you can get for me," he spat. "This whole experience has been a waste of my time. The service is slow, the staff is incompetent, and the establishment is a joke." At that moment, Carlos, the young busboy, was clearing a nearby table. In his haste and nervousness under Sterling's toxic aura, a fork slipped from his tray and clattered onto the floor. It was a minor incident, something that happens a dozen times a night in any busy restaurant. Sterling whipped his head around. "What is wrong with you people? Can't you even clear a table without making a racket? You're useless." That was it. That was the line. Insulting her was one thing. Insulting the restaurant was another. But publicly berating a hard-working kid like Carlos over a dropped fork, that was unforgivable. Before Maya could speak, Carlos, who had a fiery temper beneath his quiet exterior, muttered just loud enough to be heard, "Jerk." Sterling's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "What did you just say to me?" he asked, his voice lethally soft. Mr. Rossi, seeing the situation escalating, hurried over. Is there a problem here?" Mr. Sterling stood up, towering over the elderly restaurant owner. The friendly facade was gone. This was the predator she had read about. "The problem," Rossi Sterling sneered, dropping the formality, "is your staff. This boy just called me a jerk. And this one," he gestured dismissively at Maya, "doesn't know the difference between a premier crew and toilet water. This is the kind of amateur operation you're running. And you wonder why you're failing." Mr. Rossi's face paled, but he stood his ground. "My staff are good people." Carlos apologized to the gentleman. Carlos looked at the floor, his jaw tight. "He called me useless." Now Mr. Rossi insisted, his voice trembling slightly. "No," Sterling said with a cruel smile. "Don't have him apologize. Fire him. Fire him right now, in front of me. Maybe then you'll start to understand the kind of decisive action required in business." Mr. Rossi looked from Sterling's cold, demanding face to Carlos's frightened, defiant one. He looked utterly defeated. "Mr. Sterling, please. He is a boy. He's an employee, and he's incompetent. Just like this entire crumbling mausoleum," Sterling said, his voice dropping. He leaned in closer to Rossi, his voice a venomous whisper Maya could just barely overhear. "I made you a generous offer for this property, Rossi, a final offer. You have until Friday to accept it. After that, I'll have my friends at the City Zoning Board condemn the entire block for urban renewal. Your choice. Take the money and walk away, or lose everything. Think about that." He threw a few $100 bills onto the table, far more than the check, a gesture not of generosity, but of contempt. He looked directly at Maya one last time. "And you," he said, "you should find a job you're actually qualified for. Maybe washing dishes. Somewhere you don't have to think." With that, he and a pale-faced Arthur turned and strode out of the restaurant, leaving a crater of silence in their wake. Mr. Rossi sagged against the table, looking 10 years older. Carlos looked like he was about to cry. Brenda was frozen, her hand over her mouth. Maya looked at the wreckage. She saw Mr. Rossi's trembling hands, the threat hanging over his head, the legacy of his wife about to be bulldozed for another glass tower. She felt the sting of Sterling's final insult, not because it hurt her, but because of its casual, unthinking cruelty. He didn't just want to buy a building. He wanted to crush the spirit of the people inside it. In that moment, something inside her shifted. The quiet observer, the woman hiding from her own life, vanished. In her place stood the architect of Project Chimera, a woman who had fought off corporate sharks, stared down skeptical investors, and built an empire from nothing but lines of code and sheer force of will. The deal with Microsoft wasn't just for 9 figures. After a last-minute bidding war with Google, the final number was $1.2 billion, and it had closed yesterday afternoon. The money was sitting in a newly created trust account, waiting for a purpose. She looked at Mr. Rossi's defeated face, at the photo of Stella on the wall, at the warmth of the room that had been her shelter. Damian Sterling thought he could buy anything. He was about to find out he was wrong. Maya finished her shift in a state of cold, focused fury. She mechanically cleared tables, cashed out her final customers, and rolled her silverware, her mind 1,000,000 miles away. She said goodnight to a subdued Brenda and a guilt-ridden Carlos, whom Mr. Rossi had sent home early, with a reassuring pat on the shoulder. She paused by Mr. Rossi's office. He was sitting at his desk, his head in his hands, a stack of letters with the Sterling Properties logo visible on top. The sight solidified the knot of resolve in her stomach. She walked the 6 blocks to her small furnished apartment. The place was Spartan functional. A laptop, a second monitor, a bed, a chair. It was a waiting room, a place to exist, until her real life began. She ignored the blinking light on her answering machine, knowing it would be her mother asking why she hadn't called. She kicked off her comfortable, worn-out work shoes and sat on the edge of her bed. For a moment, the sheer audacity of what she was contemplating washed over her. It was insane. It was impulsive. It was the kind of thing people in movies did. But the memory of Sterling's sneer, the sound of his snapping fingers, the look of utter despair on Mr. Rossi's face, it was more real than any of the abstract billions sitting in her account. What was the money for anyway? For years the goal had been survival, then success, then freedom. She had dreamed of buying a house for her parents, of traveling, of starting a new, less stressful company. But was freedom just the absence of worry, or was it the ability to act? The power to draw a line in the sand and say, "No, you will not cross this." Sterling had called La Stella a crumbling mausoleum. He was wrong. It was alive. It was a sanctuary not just for her, but for dozens of people. It was a piece of the city's soul, and he wanted to extinguish it for profit. She picked up her phone. She didn't hesitate. It rang twice before a crisp, familiar voice answered. "Marcus. It's Maya. Maya, I was just about to call you. The final wire confirmations came through an hour ago. Every single cent is accounted for. Congratulations, you did it. You are officially a very, very wealthy woman." Marcus Thorne's voice was warm with genuine pride. He had been with her since the early days, a sharp, loyal lawyer who had believed in her when she was just a kid with a crazy idea. "I know. Thanks, Marcus. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Name it. Want me to buy you a private island, a G6? The Chicago Bulls, he joked. Maya's voice was flat, devoid of humor. "I need you to buy a building." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Okay. A residential building. Commercial. Are we talking about a new headquarters for our next venture?" "A restaurant," Maya said. "It's called La Stella. It's on the corner of Clark and Monroe." Marcus was silent for a few seconds. She could hear the faint sound of him typing on his keyboard. "La Stella. Okay, I see it. An Italian place. Historic property. Maya, what's this about?" "It's being targeted by a developer, a man named Damian Sterling. Sterling Properties." Another pause longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had lost its jovial tone. "Sterling, I know him. By reputation. He's a shark, Maya, a bottom feeder in a bespoke suit. He's been trying to consolidate that entire block for years. From what I can see here in the public records, he owns everything around it. La Stella is the last holdout. The owner is a Giovanni Rossi. I know Maya said. Sterling was in the restaurant tonight. He's trying to force Rossi to sell. He threatened him. He gave him until Friday. Classic Sterling tactics. Bully threaten and litigate them into the ground until they have no choice but to sell for pennies on the dollar," Marcus said, with disgust. "So you want to... What, help Mr. Rossi with legal fees? Set up a fund to fight him?" "No," Maya said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, but laced with steel. "I want you to buy it, not just the restaurant, the whole building, everything. I want you to make an offer to Mr. Rossi that he can't refuse. Not a sterling offer that feels like a threat, but a real one. A generous one. Something that honors what he's built. And I want you to do it tonight." "Tonight, Maya, that's impossible. A commercial real estate deal of this magnitude in downtown Chicago. This takes weeks, months. Due diligence, title searches, environmental checks." "I've done the due diligence," Maya interrupted. "I've washed the floors, I've cleaned the bathrooms, I've talked to the suppliers. The building is sound. The business is solvent, just undercapitalized. And its soul is priceless. I don't care about the surveys. This isn't a financial investment, Marcus. It's a statement. Marcus was quiet. He knew her. He knew that when she used that tone of voice, her mind was made up. He shifted into problem-solving mode. Okay, he said, the adrenaline kicking into his voice. Okay, so we're doing this. A preemptive strike. We'd need to form a shell corporation immediately, a blind LLC to make the purchase. We can't have your name attached to it, not yet. Sterling would catch wind of it and try to torpedo the deal. We need to find Rossi now and get him to agree to an exclusive negotiation period before Sterling's lawyers get to him in the morning. He's at the restaurant. In his office. Maya said. How do you know that? Because I just left there an hour ago. I work there, Marcus. I'm a waitress. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Maya could picture Marcus sitting in his sleek, minimalist office, overlooking the city, trying to process what she'd just said. The billionaire tech genius who had just revolutionized global logistics was clearing tables at a pasta joint. You're a waitress, he finally said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding. Good Lord, Maya. Of course you are. Focus, Marcus, she said, pulling him back. What do you need from me? Authorization. A lot of it. I'm going to need to move a significant amount of capital for the escrow. I'll need to put my entire real estate team on this right now. Pull them out of bed. We'll draft an offer letter tonight. I'll need you to approve it. I'll go see Rossi myself first thing in the morning before his doors even open. No, Maya said. Not in the morning. That might be too late. Sterling has a deadline of Friday, but a man like that doesn't wait. He'll send his jackals at dawn. You need to go tonight. Maya, it's almost 11 p.m., and Damien Sterling is probably sleeping soundly in his penthouse, thinking he's already won. Maya countered. We have the advantage. He doesn't know we exist. Go now. Wake up your team. Draft the offer on the way. Make it for at least 30% over Sterling's last offer. Add a clause that Mr. Rossi can stay on as a salaried manager for life with full creative control. Add another clause guaranteeing employment for the entire current staff for a minimum of 5 years, with a 20% raise effective immediately. Pay cash. No financing contingencies. Close in 48 hours. Marcus was typing furiously. This is the craziest thing I've ever done, he muttered, but there was a thrill in his voice. This was a battle, and Marcus loved to fight. Okay, I'm on my way. I'll call you from the car with the draft LLC name and the offer specifics. Keep your phone on. One more thing, Marcus Maya said, as he was about to hang up. What's that? When Sterling finds out, and he will make sure he knows who bought it. I thought you wanted to remain anonymous. I do, Maya said softly. Until tomorrow. She hung up the phone. The quiet apartment didn't feel like a waiting room anymore. It felt like a command center. She had just deployed a weapon of immense power, not for destruction, but for preservation. She thought of Sterling's smug, cruel face, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. The game was on. While Maya sat in her silent apartment, a whirlwind of controlled chaos erupted in the downtown office of Thorne & Associates, LLP. Marcus Thorne was a man transformed. The calm, reassuring lawyer was replaced by a field general launching a surprise attack. His first call was to Sarah Jenkins, the head of his real estate division, a woman so sharp she could have cut glass with a stern look. Sarah, wake up. I need you and your top 3 paralegals in the office. Now, not in an hour. Now. Marcus, it's 11:15 at night, came the groggy reply. I'm aware. I have a client making an all-cash offer on a commercial property on Clark and Monroe. We need to create a new LLC draft, a purchase agreement, and I need to have it in my hand, ready to sign in the next 90 minutes. 90. Marcus, are you insane? Who's the seller? Who's the target? The target is a restaurant called La Stella. The seller is Giovanni Rossi. And the competition? Marcus paused for effect. Is Damien Sterling. The line went silent for a beat. I'm putting my pants on, Sarah said, and hung up. Next, Marcus called his finance guy, a wizard named David Chen, who could move 8-figure sums across continents with the ease of a man ordering a pizza. The conversation was brief and to the point. An escrow account needed to be established and funded within the hour. The source of the funds was the Chimera Trust. David, long accustomed to the eccentricities of high-net-worth clients, simply said, "Consider it done." As his sleek black sedan sped through the mostly empty Chicago streets towards his office, Marcus was on the phone with Maya dictating the terms. They settled on an LLC name, Hearthstone Holdings. It sounded solid, established, and faintly anonymous. Most importantly, it held a private meaning for Maya, a combination of hearth for the warmth of the restaurant and stone for the unyielding resolve behind the purchase. He dictated the offer price. Sterling's last known offer, which Marcus's team had quickly dug up through back channels, was a lowball $4 million, an insult for a property of that size in that location. "Let's make it 8, Maya said, without hesitation. 8 million, Marcus whistled. Maya, that's wildly over market value. Market value is a number on a spreadsheet, Marcus. The value of telling a man like Damien Sterling that he can't have everything he wants is frankly priceless. We'll offer 8, and the clauses about Rossi and the staff stay in. Non-negotiable." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus said, a grin spreading across his face. This was better than any hostile takeover he'd ever orchestrated. He arrived at his office to find the lights blazing. Sarah and her team were already there, coffee brewing, computers humming. The air crackled with energy. They were a SEAL team of corporate law, and this was the kind of high-stakes, high-speed mission they lived for. For the next hour, they worked with furious efficiency. Sarah's team formed the LLC. With the stater process they could expedite through online portals. They drafted the purchase agreement, a work of art in its precision and clarity, specifically designed to be ironclad and simple enough for an elderly man without his own lawyer present to understand. It was overwhelmingly, undeniably in his favor. David Chen confirmed via a secure message that $8 million had been transferred from the Chimera Trust to the newly formed Hearthstone Holdings escrow account. Everything was in place. At 12:47 a.m., Marcus Thorne stood in the center of his conference room. A paralegal handed him a freshly printed document, still warm from the printer. He reviewed it one last time. The offer was perfect. It was a golden shield designed to protect La Stella and everyone in it. He slipped the document into a fine leather portfolio. "All right, everyone," he said to his bleary-eyed but exhilarated team. "Thank you. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we make a dragon eat his words." He took the elevator down to the deserted lobby, his heart pounding, with a mixture of adrenaline and anticipation. He got back in his car and gave the driver the address for La Stella. It was time to knock on Mr. Rossi's door. It was time to save a soul. The following morning, the air in La Stella was thick with a quiet dread. Mr. Rossi had not gone home. He had slept for a few fitful hours on the lumpy couch in his office, waking with the weight of Sterling's threat pressing down on him. The Friday deadline felt like a guillotine. He knew in his heart he couldn't fight a monster like Sterling Properties. His savings were gone, sunk back into the restaurant over the years. He would have to sell. He would have to let Stella's legacy die. Maya arrived for her 9 a.m. shift, her eyes clear and her expression unreadable. She tied on her apron, the familiar weight a strange comfort. She greeted Brenda and Carlos, whose faces were grim. The story of Sterling's visit and his ultimatum had spread through the small staff like a virus. At 10:30 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. It wasn't a customer. It was Damian Sterling, flanked by two lawyers in sharp, dark suits. He was not here to eat. He was here to collect. "Rossi," he called out, his voice booming in the nearly empty restaurant. "Let's not drag this out. My lawyers have the final papers. Sign them. Take the check and walk away." Mr. Rossi emerged from his office, his face ashen. He looked at Sterling, then at the staff who had gathered nervously near the kitchen. He saw their fear, their uncertainty. It was the look of a family about to be evicted. "Mr. Sterling," he began, his voice hoarse, "could we not discuss this in private?" Why, Sterling scoffed. "There's nothing to discuss. This is a business transaction. They all work for me now anyway. Or they will until I tear this dump down." He gestured to one of his lawyers, who stepped forward and placed a thick document and a pen on the bar. "Sign it, Giovanni. It's over." Mr. Rossi walked towards the bar as if in a trance. He picked up the pen, his hand shaking. He looked at the signature line. It felt like signing a death certificate. Maya watched from her station, her hands busy polishing wine glasses, her heart pounding a steady rhythmic drum. Wait for it, she told herself. Just wait for it. And then the bell above the door chimed again. A man stepped inside, radiating an aura of calm, expensive authority that made Sterling's power seem brutish and loud by comparison. It was Marcus Thorne. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, carrying a slim leather portfolio. He surveyed the scene, Sterling's arrogant posture, Mr. Rossi's defeated slump, the lawyers waiting like vultures, and his expression hardened slightly. "Am I interrupting something?" Marcus asked, his voice smooth and clear. Sterling turned annoyed by the interruption. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is Marcus Thorne," he said, walking forward and placing a business card on the bar next to Sterling's contract. "I'm an attorney. We're in the middle of a private transaction here, Thorne. Get lost," one of Sterling's lawyers snapped. Marcus ignored him, his focus entirely on Mr. Rossi. "Mr. Giovanni Rossi, a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm here on behalf of my client, Hearthstone Holdings, LLC. Sterling laughed, a short, barking sound. "Hearthstone Holdings, never heard of them. Look, pal, whatever you're selling, we're not interested. This property is under contract." "Is it?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. He looked at the unsigned document on the bar. "It doesn't appear to be. It appears you've made an offer. But an offer can't be accepted if the property is no longer for sale." Sterling's smirk faltered. "What are you talking about?" Marcus turned his full attention to Mr. Rossi, his voice gentle. "Mr. Rossi, late last night, my client authorized me to present you with an offer to purchase this building and the restaurant business. We came to an agreement. You signed a letter of intent, which included an exclusivity clause, effective immediately." He slid his own document out of his portfolio. It was the one Mr. Rossi had signed at 1:15 a.m. in his office, his eyes wide with disbelief and tears of gratitude. "My team wired a non-refundable deposit of $1 million to your personal bank account at 2:30 a.m. this morning, as a show of good faith," Marcus continued. "The full purchase price of $8 million was transferred into escrow at 8:00 a.m. The title transfer was filed with the county clerk's office at 9:05 a.m. As of he checked his watch 1 hour and 25 minutes ago, Mr. Rossi is no longer the owner of this property. Hearthstone Holdings is." The silence in the room was absolute. Sterling's face had gone from arrogant to confused, to a dark, mottled red of pure fury. "That's impossible," he seethed. "No deal happens that fast." "Who is Hearthstone Holdings? Who is your client?" Marcus, smiled a cool, dangerous smile. My client is someone who believes in preserving beautiful things, someone who understands that the value of a place like this can't be measured in square footage, and someone who took great offense to the way you treated the staff here last night. Sterling stared at him, his mind racing, trying to figure out which of his rivals could have done this. Was it a competitor from New York, a foreign investor? Who is it? He demanded, his voice a low growl. I'll double their offer. I'll sue you. I'll sue Rossi. You can't, Marcus said simply. The deal is done. It's ironclad. And as for who my client is... He paused, and his eyes flickered past Sterling, towards the waitress who was calmly putting down her polishing cloth. Slowly, deliberately, Maya untied the strings of her apron. She folded it neatly and placed it on the bar. She then turned to face Damien Sterling. He stared at her, a flicker of vague recognition in his eyes. The incompetent waitress from the night before. He looked from her to Marcus, then back to her. A horrified, sickening wave of understanding washed over his face. No, he whispered. It can't be. Maya took a step forward, her gaze level and unwavering. You told me I should find a job I was qualified for, she said, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of a billion-dollar verdict. So I did. I'm the new owner. Welcome to my restaurant. The fallout was a cataclysm of silence. Damien Sterling, a man whose voice could shatter the confidence of CEOs and bend city officials to his will, stood utterly neutered. His mouth was slightly agape, his sharp, predatory eyes now wide and blank with incomprehension. The world as he understood it had just been inverted. Power flowed from wealth, and wealth was a weapon to be wielded. Yet this waitress had just disarmed him with a quiet statement that defied all logic he held sacred. His two lawyers' men, paid handsomely to be unflappable, looked like lost children, their gazes shifting between the still composed figure of Maya and the imploding star that was their client. Sterling finally choked out the single word, a testament to a universe turned upside down. It wasn't just a question, it was an indictment of his entire belief system. The gears in his mind spun furiously, searching for a logical explanation, a hidden angle. Was she the secret daughter of a rival, the mistress of a foreign oligarch, the possibilities warred in his head, each more outlandish than the last, because the simple truth was too absurd to contemplate. You're a waitress. I was... Maya corrected him, her voice holding no triumph, only a quiet finality. It was a privilege to work in this establishment. It gave me a unique perspective, a chance to observe what is truly valuable. It's an insight that seems to have eluded you. Sterling's face, which had cycled through confusion and rage, now settled on a mask of pallid denial. He took a half-step forward, his instinct for aggression flickering back to life. This is a trick, he snarled, his voice regaining some of its familiar, guttural timbre. He pointed a trembling accusatory finger at Marcus. Some kind of convoluted legal maneuver. A sham. I will fight this. I will bury you in litigation until you beg me to take this crumbling pile of bricks off your hands. Marcus Thorne, who had remained a pillar of calm, allowed a faint, pitying smile to touch his lips. He stepped forward, not to confront Sterling, but to stand as a shield before Maya and Mr. Rossi. By all means, Mr. Sterling, please do file that lawsuit, he invited, his tone dangerously smooth. The discovery process will be fascinating. We will publicly depose Mr. Rossi and his staff about your tactics. We will subpoena your internal communications regarding the acquisition of this block. We will present as a matter of public record the story of how you attempted to bully an elderly widower into selling his family's legacy for less than half its assessed value. He let that sink in before continuing, his voice dropping slightly. And then we will tell the other side of the story, the part where my client, a self-made tech innovator who just finalized one of the largest private AI acquisitions in recent years, decided to purchase the property herself, paying double your offer in cash, overnight, for the simple stated reason that you were profoundly rude to her and her colleagues. I imagine the business ethics columnists at the Wall Street Journal and the human interest writers at the Tribune would find that narrative quite compelling. Your shareholders, on the other hand, might have some pointed questions about your temperament and judgment when they read about how a multi-million-dollar strategic acquisition was scuttled by your inability to treat a waitress with basic human decency. Every word was a perfectly placed scalpel, surgically dismantling what remained of Sterling's composure. The mention of his shareholders was the final fatal thrust. He could survive a lost deal. He could not survive ridicule. In his world, being outmaneuvered was a defeat. Being made to look like a petty, foolish bully was an extinction-level event. The fight drained out of him, leaving a hollowed, shrunken man in a suit that suddenly seemed too large. He cast one last bewildered look at Maya, as if trying to memorize the face of the anomaly who had broken him. Then, without another word, he turned. It was not a striding, confident exit. It was a retreat. He walked out of the restaurant, his lawyers trailing behind like pilot fish attending a dying shark. The bell above the door chimed a small, cheerful sound that served as an epitaph for his failed conquest. For a long moment, the restaurant was suspended in a vacuum of stunned silence. Then a soft, choked sound broke the stillness. It was Giovanni Rossi. He leaned against the bar, his shoulders shaking as years of pent-up fear, stress, and grief gave way. Tears streamed down his weathered cheeks, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were a flood of pure, unadulterated relief. Brenda, the hardened veteran, stood, frozen her hand, covering her mouth, as she stared at Maya with entirely new eyes. Carlos looked from Mr. Rossi to Maya, his young face a kaleidoscope of confusion, awe, and dawning joy. The crushing guilt he felt over the dropped fork over provoking Sterling evaporated, replaced by the giddy realization that he had just witnessed a miracle. Maya walked over to Mr. Rossi and gently placed a hand on his arm. "Giovanni," she said, her voice soft. "It's over. La Stella is safe." He turned, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand, looking at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "But who are you, my child?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "My name is Maya Reed," she said simply. "For the past 6 months, my life has been complicated, very stressful. This place and you gave me a sanctuary. You gave me a job, no questions asked. You treated me with a kindness and respect I desperately needed. All I'm doing," she said with a small, wry smile, "is returning the favor with a slightly more significant gesture." She then turned to face her former colleagues. "As of this morning, a company called Hearthstone Holdings owns La Stella," she announced, her voice clear and steady. "But I want you all to know that nothing essential is going to change, except for the better." She looked directly at Brenda and Carlos. "My lawyer Marcus drew up some new employment contracts. Every member of the current staff is guaranteed their position for a minimum of the next 5 years. And effective last Monday, you are all receiving a 20% raise." If the previous silence was stunning, this one was electric. Carlos's jaw dropped. Brenda let out a short, sharp laugh of disbelief. "You're kidding me," she rasped. "I'm not," Maya assured her. "And there's more. We'll be setting up a tuition assistance program for any staff or children of staff who are pursuing higher education." She gave Carlos a pointed look, and he flushed with pleasure. "We're also getting a brand new kitchen for Miguel, and a point-of-sale system that doesn't require a prayer to operate. Finally, she turned back to the tear-streaked, beaming face of Giovanni Rossi. And Giovanni, the most important part of the offer we discussed last night, still stands. I need a general manager. Someone who knows the soul of this place. The position is yours for as long as you desire it on a generous salary. You will retain complete control over the menu, the kitchen, the ambiance. Your family's name, your wife's name, is on the sign outside. My name is just on the deed. Your only job is to do what you've always done, keep the heart of La Stella beating. She paused, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. And we will be undertaking some necessary renovations. New wiring, soundproofing, shoring up the foundation. And we will be building a proper climate-controlled wine cellar in the basement. I've already placed our first order. It's a case of 2015's Sassicaia. It should be here by Friday. It will be on the house. At that, a sound that hadn't been heard in La Stella for months erupted from Giovanni Rossi. It was a deep, full-throated laugh of pure joy. It echoed off the old wooden walls, chasing away the last shadows of Damien Sterling's visit. He enveloped Maya in a fierce, paternal hug, and for the first time, Maya Reed felt the full, tangible weight of what she had done. It was a weight that felt like coming home. In the weeks that followed, La Stella was reborn. The quiet dread was replaced by a bustling, joyful energy. The hushed sounds of electricians and plumbers mapping out a new future mingled with the familiar, comforting clatter of the kitchen. The staff moved with a lighter step, their smiles quicker, their pride in their work radiant. Maya, true to her word, became the establishment's quiet guardian. She traded her waitress apron for her laptop, setting up her new global headquarters at Table 7. From that corner booth, she managed the vast complexities of the Chimera Trust, took calls with world leaders in tech and finance, and sketched out the architecture for her next philanthropic venture, all while the comforting scent of garlic and simmering tomatoes filled the air. She had not just bought a restaurant. She had anchored her new, unimaginable life to something real, something with soul. She had faced down a titan, not with the brute force of wealth, but with the quiet, devastating power of purpose. And in the heart of a city that worshipped money, Maya Reed proved that true wealth wasn't about what you could buy, but about what you refused to let be sold. That's the incredible story of Maya Reed and La Stella. It's a powerful reminder that strength isn't always loud, and that true wealth has nothing to do with the number in your bank account, but everything to do with the character in your heart. It shows us that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one making the most noise, but the one quietly observing, waiting for the right moment to act. If this story inspired you or reminded you of the power of kindness and quiet strength, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this. Share it with someone you think would appreciate it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story. What did you think of Maya's decision? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for listening.